Thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native podcast. According to the Gartner Hype Cycle, by 2026, 80% of large software engineering organization will establish platform engineering teams as internal provider of reusable services, components, and tools for application delivery, up from 45% in 2022. What is platform engineering? So platform engineering improves developer experience and productivity by providing self-service capabilities with automated infrastructure operations, and it is trending because of its promise to optimize the developer experience and accelerate product teams delivery of customer value. And speaking of this definition, I'm right now talking to the author of this definition, Daniel Bryant. So, a bit about Daniel Bryant. Daniel Bryant is the head of product marketing at Syntasso. His technical expertise on DevOps tooling, cloud, container platform, and microservices implementation. Daniel is a longtime coder, platform engineer, and Java champion, and he contributed to several open source projects. He also writes for InfoQ, O'Reilly, and the News Stack, and regularly presents at international conferences such as KubeCon, QCon, and Java One. In his copious amount of time, he enjoys running, reading, and traveling. So, without any further delay, let's get straight to Daniel Bryant. Daniel, if I misses anything, please add in your intro.
That was fantastic, Sam. I'm almost feeling embarrassed. You've covered all my hobbies, all my interests, all my professional career. Thank you very much for the nice introduction.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So Daniel is actually joined this on my YouTube channel this month, this year actually, very early, I think in February, where we talk about
Yeah.
developer relations. But now our agenda is a bit about little different, and that we're speaking about today is platform engineering. So Daniel, platform engineering in 2024, what are the newest challenges we have seen organizations are solving with this new trending term that is platform engineering?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. And I think the biggest trend now is how popular it's become. Do you know what I mean? You actually said in the introduction, like Gartner are jumping on board, and I love the Gartner folks. Whenever Gartner highlights something as interesting, you know most of the industry is getting behind it because Gartner generally skew towards enterprise companies, the companies that are delivering lots of value, making lots of money, they employ lots of people, right? So Gartner do not take their role lightly. They only talk about things when there's a lot of sort of momentum, groundswell, and interest. And I think, as you framed earlier on, Sam, that the real evolution is from DevOps into platform engineering. The definition you gave, and to be fair, it's not my definition. I think I borrowed it from the CNCF, and there was Evan Butcher and a few other folks from ThoughtWorks. If you look at the core definition of platform engineering, the self-service capabilities, the API-driven capabilities of the platform, treating your platform as a product, that's a really big one, right? Making the platform as a product. These are all really evolutions of good things that have come from DevOps. Do you know what I mean? DevOps, we really focused on applying software engineering principles to operations, to thinking about feedback loops and continuous delivery, and that was fantastic. But I am now super excited that we as a community, and I would say we like CNCF, cloud native folks, Kubernetes folks, are kind of coming together and saying, you know what, the next evolution of exciting things is built around building platforms. And if you build effective platforms, then the developers and other folks can build amazing applications on top of them for end users. And that's what we're all here for, right? Building and shipping amazing applications that do cool stuff. But you've got to have the platforms to be able to make it easy, effective, safe, fast, efficient to ship those applications to end users.
Yes, absolutely. And right now, as speaking of platform engineering, Daniel is a part of the wonderful team where I have so many friends from Abby Bankser, Paula Kennedy, and thankfully so, we had spent it a lot of time in the platform working group. And speaking
Yeah,
of which,
yeah.
here Syntasso actually denoted their platform engineering maturity model. And right now,
Yes.
somewhere in popping up in your screen, so you can actually click on the link and go enjoy it or reading that paper. And that is donated by Syntasso. And we're right now the Daniel is actually spending a lot of time as well, and he wrote wonderful article. One of the article where I wrote, we actually picked the definition from it. Actually, learned from his article as well. So speaking of Syntasso, as you're speaking about your conversation, complexities in related to infrastructure is so much these days. We have containers, we had orchestration technologies, service meshes, observability layer.
Yeah.
Everybody feel like we're not doing anything for the business value. It's just we actually
Yeah.
picking and choosing all the different technology for our fun purposes. But thankfully that the platform engineering coming up. So right now, can you tell us a bit about Kratix open source platform created by Syntasso folks, how it's different for what's already in the market, and what are some of the terminologies in that platform, in that open source tool that you think readers should be have understanding about it?
Yeah, great question, Sam. And I really got to shout out Abby and Paula and Colin and Kat and there's many other amazing folks at Syntasso. I can't name everyone, but they're amazing people. And I cannot claim any credit for all the work they've done. Like so Abby was primarily driving the platform maturity model, a year ago or more. And I remember chatting to her about it then. And Abby's awesome. And the community, the working group that I know you're involved in, and the tag app delivery, like fantastic work. And yeah, I arrived at Syntasso when all that work had been shipped. So like I cannot claim any credit for like all that good stuff, right? But the reason I joined Syntasso, to your point, was multiple reasons. But the people are awesome. I've known Colin, Chris, and Paula, the founders, for years. I've followed Abby's work from afar for such a long time. And I downloaded and played with Kratix, to your point, right? I was like, hey, if I'm gonna like join a company, I've got to play with the tool. I've really got to understand what it's about. Because I'm a software engineer at heart, like you like. We like getting hands-on with the code, right? Hands-on with the tech. And for me, Kratix was that kind of framework that was missing in a lot of the work that I'd done on platforms previously. So there's many ways of looking at Kratix, and there's other products that are similar to it as well. But the way I look at it is it's a platform orchestrator. And when I say that is it kind of sits in the middle between, say, portals up the top, like Backstage and Port and Cortex, all those good things. And it sits in the middle between portals and the infrastructure as code. So things like Terraform, Puppet, Crossplane, many things there. And what I found over my career is we've had some form of portals for years. I've been coding in Terraform for 10 years now, right? But I often found orchestrating these things were a little bit clumsy, right? Do you know what I mean? As in, like, portals are very good for getting started. Click a button, you get some scaffolding, you get some code, you're bootstrapping really quick, lovely. They're not so good for managing what we call the day two situations. When you want to upgrade your app, you want to reprovision infrastructure, apply new policy. Portals, they're definitely getting better, but I think there's a bit of a missing gap there. You almost want some kind of intelligent glue or invisible glue, right, between that portal and the infrastructure to help provide clearer APIs to help manage the life cycle of the underlying infrastructure. As things get upgraded, new security threats pop up, new policy needs to be applied. And Kratix is that framework where we provide what we call a promise. And that's really just an API that you build for your business needs. So if you want a Kafka as a service, something like that, right? You can create a promise which is exposed as a Kubernetes CRD. So folks in the Kubernetes world will instantly recognize it. If you're not in the Kubernetes world, it's not a big learning curve, but you can code an API for Kafka as a service, and the Kratix gives you a nice structure and a nice framework for encoding all the things that are important to your business. So you might want to have a very simple API that just says, get me a Kafka topic. Or you might want to have a really complex API that says, get me a Kafka topic with these security things, with these non-functional requirements. But Kratix allows you as a platform engineer to choose the level of the API. You build the API to your specifications, and then we have what's called workflows under the hood, and they can apply things like security scanning, policy checks, notifications, and they basically manage the life cycle of all the components within the platform. So that's the two, in my mind, the two really powerful things of Kratix is that API, so you can create a component for your platform, for your needs, and those workflows that allow you to manage those components over days, weeks, months, years. And another thing I've got to mention with the workflows, they are reusable as well. So say if you create some policy or some security scanning code, you can reuse that. Like say you've done it for Kafka, you could reuse it for a Postgres service. You could reuse it for a MySQL service. So it's the framework, it's the reusability, and it's the kind of codification of best practices that Kratix is a real valuable tool for platform engineers.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been really listening to your conversation because I get a very good understanding of, because right now, if you look at the infrastructure we're speaking about, there's so many missing pieces in it. And that the
Mm-mm.
reusability is always hidden from myself. And I don't
Yes.
have any APIs I can talk to and tell the portal I need this layer, and it's built up. And then it's managing the life cycle for me on behalf
Mm-mm.
of my request. So it sounds very familiar for all of the people as well. So I try to recap some of the things you spoke about. So
Yeah.
Kratix combine the flexibility of building from scratch and with the self-service power of public clouds. It
Mm-hmm.
helps manage resources as fleet and
Yeah.
automate platform resource lifecycle. It offers self-service capabilities for the developers and helps keep the platform team up to date and secure. And it's enable co-creation of
Yeah.
capabilities.
Yeah.
And it's also provide a clear contract between application teams and platform teams through the definition of promise. I hope I
Fantastic, Sam. Yeah, you should be on our marketing team. That was fantastic.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Daniel. So let's try to cover. I think there's a few things I recently read from your article and it sound very resonating for me. So I have the opportunity to talk to you with on these three terminologies. One thing, what is platform orchestrator? We have seen so many terminologies in the platform engineering vocabulary and glossary, and that's new terminologies actually building up this year is platform orchestrator. And you in the
Mm-hmm.
definition of the Kratix, you talk about this is a platform orchestrator. We already know what the orchestrator does from the Kubernetes world, but how it's different from that orchestrator and what the job of the platform orchestrator is today.
Yes, it's a great question, and it is still evolving. And I think several different people have different definitions, just as we do with DevOps, and other things. We have different definitions, right? But for me, that platform orchestration layer I talked about, portals, orchestration, and infrastructure, it really is this sort of intelligent glue capabilities, right? It's all about the API and the coordination and management over time. I think that's one of the key things. Like, definitely you'll recognize as a software engineer, however you want to consume a dependency, a piece of code, a library, there's always an API, right? An SDK, call it what you will. But it's so important to be intentional about the API. So platform orchestrators allow the composition of underlying infrastructure and services, but in a consumable API. So they're orchestrating all these infrastructure services for easy consumption by developers. But that only gets you started on day one. So another big thing with platform orchestrators is managing the life cycle. So if you look at, there's many different ways. I know, like, and I've talked about Kratix. I know there's Humanitech have a graph-based platform orchestration tool, kind of more akin to some of the Terraform directed acyclic graphs, that kind of DAGs we call them. They've got that. There's Fusion Stack, another thing that's popped up from the Ant group, I believe, and now I think it's a CNCF sandbox project, and they look at platform orchestration very similar to us in terms of sort of the API and the life cycle, but perhaps with less focus on some of the workflows. But I think if you boil all these three things down, and it really focuses on the interface. How do developers consume what infrastructure and platform teams want them to? And how do we as a team, and I mean developers all the way through to QA and ops, how do we manage the life cycle over time? Because you and I both know it's kind of easy to get started, but the successful apps hopefully are around for weeks, months, years, right? And you've got to be able to maintain them. So the platform orchestrators will, like you were saying with Kubernetes, if something disappears, Kubernetes will reconcile that and say, hey, I wanted 3 replicas, I've only got 2, I'll bring a third one back up. And I think the platform orchestration does the reconciliation at a slightly higher level. It's not just looking at pods or these kind of things. It's looking more at the platform in general. Oh, hey, this part of the platform has disappeared. Bring it back up. Or there's a new security vulnerability that's been discovered in MySQL. Well, we need to roll out security fixes to all of the MySQLs. Do you know what I mean? So it's very similar to what Kubernetes does in terms of reconciliation and orchestration, but at a slightly higher level. And the units of work are more focused on platform components rather than pods, services, replica sets, that kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody listening to us is big super sense for us because right now, if you look at the infrastructure in the past, we have built some anonymous infrastructure for one team. They are using it for their operational complexities, but the rest of the team doesn't know it. And if that layer accidentally deleted, nobody knows what the hell is going
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
If
yeah,
the platform has created, look at it now, these free composition or composites construct are deleted, they spun it up back up, so you don't
yeah, yeah,
need to worry about why this is thing happening. So it's the reason because we need this infrastructure piece very importantly. That's why we spun it up, but it's
yeah,
accidentally deleted. Nobody know what the hell is going on. You'll have to look at
yeah,
events
yeah,
and logs, and you have
yeah.
to actually shout out with the team about what the hell you actually does last
Yeah, that
it's
happens quite a
actually
lot, right?
deleted.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
agreed.
So I think that's orchestration at the platform layer makes
Yep.
super sense right now, the way you actually phrases all the terminology. And speaking of which, where I deviate the conversation because we spoke about platform orchestration, and there's the application team, and there's our developers, and there are DevOps team. So let's say as a developer, I need to create a standard application so that I can efficiently build a consistent application infrastructure. So, Daniel, being a DevOps, what should I do?
Well, I'd say use Kratix, obviously, Sam, right? That's the most important thing. But I think as a DevOps engineer, as a platform engineer, you really need to listen to your customers. Like again, that product mindset, right? And really, the customers are developers. So you need to say, hey, how do you want to consume the platform? Do you want to do it via portals, via an API, via a CLI? You understand how they want to interact with the platform. You try and extract their biggest pain points. Like, are they struggling with bootstrapping applications? Are they struggling with CI/CD? Are they struggling with monitoring, right? And then once you understand their biggest pain points, then work with them to deliver a platform. And it can be as simple as, putting a Jenkins there or something like that, right? Whatever works for you. But it can be really focusing on meeting their needs. Too often in my consulting career, Sam, I used to see infrastructure, DevOps teams building out these amazing platforms, but without ever talking to developers. And they wondered why developers didn't use the platforms. And as soon as I used to go in as a consultant, and my mind got blown. I would say, hey, why are developers not using the platform? And they would say, we've got no idea. We never talk to developers. And I'm just like, what? So you have to understand as a DevOps engineer, as a platform engineer, your customers are the developers. So go and buy them some snacks, hang out where they hang out, chat, ask questions. That is the biggest piece of advice. The technology is somewhat easy, in quotes, right? You can learn Terraform, you can learn Crossplane, you can learn Kratix, you can learn all these things in your own time. The hardest part for me is building something that developers actually want, and that requires a good set of listening skills.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. And I think, like, as you mentioned, I think I speak to a lot of the organization. They say we build out a platform and our developers only use when they have to troubleshoot something.
Mm,
And when their
mm,
life is going very wonderful, they don't need to care about what the hell is our platform is doing.
hmm
So then I
Yep.
think, why is troubleshooting has to be done in your platform? Because it's not making any sense, because they're actually using services that is not part of your platform. So it's a very tough part. I mean, thankfully for, I think right now, organizations starting to understand that developers are the user of the platform. So
Yes.
there has
Yes.
to be, from the day 01, are the bigger investor of your time, energy, and motivation for building out the platform. So I think
Yeah.
thankfully the marketing jargon, this is the
Mhm.
most targeting atom as well. And I think it's rightfully so, because they actually use it and then they actually try to build and they actually come with it. So
Yep.
before we start up the few of the question around some of the conference lining up for the platform engineering in the next few months. So next few question, I want you to give us a very clear vision of, I have viewers, you tell us about the platform orchestrator. Then there's a two new terminologies: application choreography and infrastructure orchestration. How
Mhm.
these two terminologies relate, or or is it different from platform orchestration?
Yeah, and I think you've been looking at my article there, Sam. Great stuff. I appreciate that. We'll definitely share that in the show notes, right? And what I was trying to get people thinking about is we're all used to portals, APIs, CLIs that we interact with the platform, right? And I just labeled that as a application choreography. I just want to say to folks like, hey, don't just think portals. I love portals. Don't get me wrong. I backstage and it's amazing. I'm friendly with the port folks, with Cortex folks. But I wanted people to say, hey, there's portals and there's brands, but really the overall term is your like choreographer, your that's hard to say, isn't it? Your or like your it's almost orchestrating applications, but you're doing application choreography. You're wanting to spin up new applications, you're wanting to visualize applications and maintain them. So the application choreography layer is focused very much at that. I, as a developer, am interacting with my applications. The orchestration layer, and I think I called it a few different things in different blogs, but I called it like the orchestration composition layer, the infrastructure composition and infrastructure orchestration layer. But that's really the infrastructure as code layer. I think we're all quite familiar with infrastructure as code. Again, Pulumi, Terraform, Crossplane, there's many amazing brands out there. But what I wanted to get people thinking about with that infrastructure composition layer is that's where you're composing various pieces of infrastructure and third-party services. And if you've got those two definitions, the application choreography, infrastructure composition, you soon realize like, hey, there is this missing invisible glue, right? Or this intelligent glue, and when I started looking at it, I was like, that is the role of the platform orchestrator. So I kind of led a little bit on my old school Java knowledge, because in Java, I used to do a lot of Java coding, and we used to build a lot of three-tier applications. And it was often like a UI, a service layer, and a data access layer. And it's kind of similar to those three layers in platforms, right? So that's why I sort of just pulled some names out. I'm not saying the names are completely correct. I'm sure they'll change, but I wanted to help provide that model for people to understand. Hey, in the old Java world, we had UI, service, and data access. Well, in the platform world, we might have application choreography, platform orchestration, and infrastructure composition.
Absolutely. And speaking of all these conversations, I think if you ask me, from the web for a whole year, the blog that actually written by Daniel is one of my favorite one. He actually wrote it, I think, in February 29.
Yeah, yeah,
Some of
yeah.
the question actually bringing from that conversation, because it's look really sense for me as a developer,
Cool,
because as
cool.
you mentioned, like we have UI layer, we have API layer, and we have a data
Yeah,
access layer.
yeah. Perfect,
Let's
perfect.
all of them do a choreography. Then I
Mm-mm.
need an infrastructure composition where all of these three sits in, talk to
Yep.
each other, give them a message when they actually has spun up or tear down. And then you need a platform orchestration layer. So I really love the terminologies of choreography, orchestration, and infrastructure composition. So I think this is really makes sense for me. So this is my favorite article for this year.
Thanks, Sam. Awesome, awesome. Good to hear.
That's why I actually chosen some of the question from that angle as well. So I think
Yeah,
we
yeah.
speak about the Kratix and the platform engineering, some
Mhm.
of the Gartner thing as well. Now, the next few months are very, very important for all of the folks who are actually
Yeah.
attending KubeCon and KCD
Yeah,
UK. I believe KCD UK is happening prior to the KubeCon Salt
it
Lake.
is. It is. Yep.
So we need to spend some time understanding what is the flow of the KCD UK as we are speaking today.
Yeah, so the KCD folks, Paula, my boss, is actually involved with the organization. There are many other good people. I encourage everyone to have a look at the KCD UK website. And the Kubernetes community days are just fantastic, Sam, right? They are global. Like I see constantly, ones popping up all over the place. And if you are not fortunate enough to be able to travel to a main KubeCon, I think KCD is the next best thing. And to be honest, KCD may be even better, right? Because one thing, I mean, I love KCD and I love KubeCon. Don't get me wrong, I love them both. But KCDs have a much more community feel. Like the London one, I knew 80% of the people there because they're my friends, right? Do you know what I mean? From the Kubernetes community. And I hear similar stories from my friends in India, in China, all over the world. The
Yes.
the local feel of KCD allows you to really build that local community, meet people, share ideas. There's cultural similarities, there's business problems that are similar in wherever you are in the world. And it's a great conference to start out at. If, for example, you are wanting to get into speaking, not only is it a bit easier to get into a KCD locally, but it's much more supportive and less scary than doing a KubeCon, right? So I encourage folks. I've been to a couple of the KCDs around the world, and the London one I really enjoyed last year. Such a friendly audience. I learned a bunch of stuff about, not only classic platform architecture, platform engineering, but the latest developments in Kubernetes. And I've looked at the program this year for KCD UK. I'm lucky enough to do a lightning talk about platform orchestration. So I'm doing a lightning talk about that. But there's people like Katie Ganji, there's Katie Gamanji, there's Sarah Wells. I saw a bunch of interesting looking people like doing keynotes. I saw James Laverack doing like a deep dive on some of the container stuff. These are people I've followed for years. Like they do amazing work. They're there 2 days of incredible talks. Like I'm so looking forward to KCD UK. It's always a fun event.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I think KCD UK is one of the most sparked event in the KCD's umbrella. It's been once some of the wonderful personalities and industry leaders from all across the world actually talking to them. As you mentioned, there's some wonderful people actually always participating in it. It's a mini CubeCon, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
exactly,
look at the
exactly.
KCD UK
Yeah,
because of the
yeah,
same people having the same presentation there. It always feel like a very fresh content, very new
yeah.
content, the new trends, and actually very good reviews from the great person in the community. So I think tons of appreciation to all the KCD UK team for pulling that content as well.
Fantastic
So
work. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one of the conference happening in the KubeCon LA is a co-located event where I've been
yeah.
part of the reviewing CFP reviewing
Oh,
team,
awesome, awesome.
and that's called Platform Engineering Day. There's Abby
Yeah.
and Paula is also speaking out at this conference as
Yes,
well.
yes.
And speaking of KubeCon in general and some of the co-located events, KubeCon is, I think, the most watched event in the IT sector, right? If I'm not wrong. All the people that will be there from all of the biggest organization, whether it's been AWS, Microsoft, Google, IBM, all folks have been presenting there. So, Daniel, are you actually planning to attend? If you are planning to attend, you are the one of the personality who wrote books, who have some great topics to cover. So, how people actually stay in touch with you during the KubeCon Salt Lake?
Yeah, they can definitely like hit me up on LinkedIn and Twitter or X now, and reach out and have a chat, Sam. Yeah, I'm going to be there all week. So I'm sponsoring or helping to sponsor with Syntasso Platform Engineering Day. So super excited about that. I think Abby's speaking, Paula's emceeing. There's a bunch of amazing talks I've seen lined up there already. So super excited. I'll be watching as much as I can. I'll be on the booth outside for Syntasso and for doing Kratix demos, that kind of stuff. So super excited for Plat Eng Day, Platform Engineering Day. And then at KubeCon itself, I'm doing a talk. It's actually related to what we've been discussing today around what can you learn as a software engineer and apply to platforms. So it's sort of platform engineering for software engineers and vice versa. So I'm like super excited about that one because it marries the two things that I really enjoy, software engineering and platform engineering. And I'm going to share the things I've learned from both disciplines and hopefully, whether you're a platform engineer or a software engineer, you'll walk away from that talk with a better understanding of the other side. Does that make like you mentioned, there's a lot of folks who are developers, a lot of folks who are platform engineers, and I think they struggle to communicate sometimes. So my talk is going to be helping that kind of like language barrier to some degree. We often use different words for the same thing in platform engineering and software engineering. So I'm really excited to be able to be on the KubeCon stage. It's been a couple of years since I last spoke, I think at KubeCon Valencia. As you said, the audience is fantastic. I always enjoy chatting to people. So yeah, come along to my talk. I think it's on the Friday afternoon. It's quite late, unfortunately, about 4 p.m. local time in Salt Lake City. So I'm one of the final talks. But like I'll be around the conference, sponsor hall, other places for the rest of the thing. Come and say hello if you find me. I'm super excited to meet all the good people there.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great topic, to be honest. Like, I think this is one of the topics that I haven't seen much of the conversation. So I think this is a super interesting topic because the language barrier is a big thing in the DevOps
Yeah,
paradigm. And also, I think in platform engineering, this still exists because if sometimes the way you communicate between the software engineering or the platform teams, there is a miss our communication
yeah,
sometimes, and then
agreed.
the communication our flow where you always speaking and there's nothing happening. So
Yes, yeah.
so I think this is a super interesting talk to watch out for, and I think I would definitely wish for the KubeCon LA I team up with Daniel for some of the similar topic on the KubeCon LA as well, because I love to actually team up with some of that Daniel thought as well. But I will keep that as a secret. Hopefully we collaborate in the near future in
Yeah,
20.
sounds good, Sam. Sounds good.
Absolutely. And before I let you go, I think you actually been a part of InfoQ. I wrote some of the article in the news stack. I actually have your book now in not in the hard code, but in the soft copy.
Cool, cool.
Wow.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah.
Great. But before I let you go, I know you from the InfoQ and
Mm.
some of the QCon. I know you have been a part of
Yeah,
that
yeah,
have
yeah.
initiated for a very long time. Can you tell us about what the InfoQ in journal in a few minutes and the KQCon in journals?
Yeah, sure thing, Sam. So I've been a part of the InfoQ and QCon community for over 10 years now. I used to go to QCon London conference, happens in March in the year. Just amazing architecture topics were covered. It was the sort of premier conference where you go to learn how the forward-thinking organizations and people were building software, were building infrastructure. So I love this. I think QCon London has been running for almost 16 years now. It's quite some time. But one of my mentors, Ben Evans, who was writing for InfoQ, it's kind of all the content you see on infoq.com is written by practitioners for practitioners. So there's no real journalists there. It's all people like you and me, right? Like the audience, or people who are writing software that actually writes for InfoQ. And one of my mentors, Ben, invited me to join the community. And then you go through some training and some tests and things to make sure like your writing is sort of up to a certain standard. And lots of support was given, lots of training. But I think my first article, my first news item was published in December 2014 on InfoQ. And it's a fantastic way to not only share your knowledge with the audience, and it's a global, literally readers from all over the world. But for me, it was a great forcing function to learn more things. Because if you're having to teach something or just explain it, you really have to understand it. So InfoQ is a great excuse to reach out to amazing people all around the world, to do interviews with them, like you're doing podcasts, just basically learn as much as I can. The community is still going strong. InfoQ runs obviously 24/7, 365 on the internet. And the kind of live versions of InfoQ are the QCon conferences. And they happen as London this year, San Francisco. And we also have smaller InfoQ Dev Summit conferences. I was in Boston a couple of months ago, fantastic Dev Summit there. And Munich is coming up at end of September. So if you're in the German speaking region, or be English spoken there as well, but be fantastic opportunity to go along to these events. They're a little bit more diverse in terms of topics than, say, KubeCon, because they cover cloud, software engineering, culture, product management. They cover a wider range. But for me, I love that. KubeCon is fantastic for cloud, and QCon is amazing for architecture and building products.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for describing this because I'm actually following it for a very long time. And hopefully, actually, people get the idea. And hopefully, you see this floaters in your screen, how to actually find the information on the internet as well. And once again, thank you very much, Daniel. Always pleasure talking to you. this every time 1 hour I spend with you, give me the enough knowledge so I can actually stay motivated for the rest of the next few months. So anytime I
Fantastic,
have the
Sam.
demotivation level keeping creeping up, I'll talk to you to actually build.
Amazing.
So once again, it's been a great talking to you, and I include all the reference material we actually spoke in this on this content, some of the blogs, some of the conferences. So you can actually find platform Daniel Bryant on LinkedIn or X, all the information available, so you can actually stay in touch with him. So thank you very much. We are wrapping up. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation, and if you have some question, please do let us know in these comment section below in the YouTube. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks.